Hello, my dear friends. Operator.starsky here. I'm very, very sorry about the delay, but I had to make myself coffee, and for Ellie as well. I really hope that Ellie is in the chat here. To you guys. Really sorry. I had no dinner, missed it somehow, and I'm really happy to see you as always. A lot of familiar faces there in the chat, and tonight we're going to talk about this Ukrainian boogeyman called Ukrainian Nationalists. All right, we will talk about what are they, how they emerged, and what do they do generally, right? Because a lot of people were asking about this, and people want to know the truth, right? What the media showing, sorry, the Russian propagandists, right? What they're showing there in the terror Russia, um, who they really are, what they do bad, what they do good, generally. And I think that I'm credible enough to talk about it because you probably know that we we have this very very long story involving me in different stages of Ukraine's political processes, right? I've been to police, I've been to military, I've been to Revolution of Dignity, and of course, I have a lot of friends on different sides of Ukrainian political spectrum, far left, far right, everyone. I know a lot of people. For some reason, I cannot explain. Um, so today we will talk about Ukrainian nationalists, and when we speak about Ukrainian nationalists, you probably think about, like those big, tough, bald-headed guys with like swastikas everywhere and stuff like that. But generally speaking, they look like this. All right. These guys on the photo, they are true Ukrainian nationalists. You can see Vasil Stus there, second on the left. He was killed in the Soviet prison. You can see plenty of people, we call them dissidents. They wear vyshyvankas, they speak Ukrainian language, they write poems, they write paintings, right? They do different texts, and their only sin of those people was that they carried Ukrainian culture back in the times when it was forbidden. Those guys, Mikhailo Gorin, Levko Lukyanenko, and Vyacheslav Chernovil, I wouldn't call them nationalists per se, though I don't think that Levko Lukyanenko, or at least Vyacheslav Chernovil, ever identified themselves as Ukrainian nationalists. But again, they were blamed of being Ukrainian nationalists by Soviet slash Russian communists, who basically put them in the jail for decades. They spent literally decades in Russian prison, in Soviet prison, for being Ukrainian patriots back in the times when you could be easily repressed for even identifying yourself as a Ukrainian, right? Wasn't really bad if actually, yeah, actually it was bad if you would say that you were a Ukrainian, because Russians would look at you as if you were an Untermensch. All right. Um, so let's talk about post-war Soviet Union just a bit, because in the post-Soviet space, Ukrainian nationalists were basically Ukrainian dissidents, people who would like to wear vyshyvanka, write a poem in Ukrainian language. God forbid criticizing totalitarian Soviet regime that killed millions of people. God forbid, because you would be easily killed. And 60s, 70s, 80s, in on the territory of the Soviet Soviet Federation. Oh my God, this big gulag called USSR. Basically, Ukrainian nationalists emerged as a response to Russia trying to assimilate Ukrainian nation and completely erase our identity the way they did with Chukcha, with Buryati, Yakuti, and a lot of smaller nationalities that were conquered by Russians here and there on their territory. This was the only reason for Ukrainian nationalist movements to emerge. Those guys, for example, I will show you really scary Ukrainian nationalists. All right, you gotta prepare. All right, my friends, because these that you will see on the next photo are like they are the worst. So those are Ukrainian nationalists, and those are like the main Ukrainian nationalists. That's basically um, Congress of Ukrainian nationalists, my friends. So those are like worst of the worst. Um, so Ukrainian dissidents, basically people who would wear poems and they would be prosecuted by Soviets. They would be thrown into jail and repressed, killed, tortured, of course. Um, Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of absolutely prominent Ukrainian artists who who are basically killed in those prisons. Nestor Makhno, I could call him nationalist, but he would call himself anarchist. All right. Um, when people speak about nationalists in Western society, in the United States, of course, for example, people mostly confuse nationalists and neo-Nazi. All right, why is it so? It's natural that if you have a multicultural society, society that consists of different religions, different races, different ethnicities, um, different cultures, right? It can be a foundation for a conflict. And in such environment, neo-Nazi movements can emerge. It's a natural thing for people to be xenophobic. It's absolutely wrong. I completely condemn this, but unfortunately, it's natural for our species because we're not perfect, right? You all have those friends, I'm sure. Um, in Ukraine, it wasn't the case because Ukraine was so much monocultural. All right, we don't have many people of different religions, different races, different ethnicities, and even though we have them, they are not much different from us. That's why we don't care much. We never had like racial conflicts. Um, we can literally count cases on probably fingers of both hands over the past 30 years. I remember literally two cases myself. So that's one of the reasons why we never had such like enormous problem, for example, like Russians have, because in Russia, you know that their skinhead movement was probably the strongest in the post-Soviet space. Organizations like Blood and Honor, White Power skinheads and stuff like that. They had plenty of those, and they were extremely violent. In Ukraine, we had a bunch of those guys. Again, not a lot, and there are very interesting facts about them. But before we switch to those guys, let's return to Ukrainian nationalists, what they are, how they emerged, specifically after the collapse of the Soviet Union, how this movement formed in Ukraine. Um, Let me introduce Mikhailo Zhizhnevsky. Okay, this guy. This guy was among the first victims of Ukrainian corrupted police back in the times of the Revolution of Dignity. He was shot. And I remember Mikhail Zhizhnevsky and myself. We were not friends, but we were acquainted. We saw each other, right? Like so I know him personally. Um, and Mikhail Zhizhnevsky comes from Belarus. You can see that he's holding the Belarusian flag, the proper Belarusian flag, in his hand. And if you take a closer look at this man, who died at a very young age, unfortunately, from the pro-Russian regime of Yanukovych, you can see that he's wearing a beret with some specific symbol on it. So Zhizhnevsky was even though he was a Belarusian, he was a Ukrainian nationalist. How is this even possible for somebody from abroad to be a Ukrainian nationalist? Well, apparently because Ukrainian nationalists are so international, right? So they accept like anybody. Um, Let me tell you just a bit about the organization that Mikhailo was member of. When Ukraine became independent, when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was this evil force called GKChP. It was basically a force designed by the Soviet Union to prevent it from collapsing. So basically, they could bring tanks, they could bring troops, they could deploy them to the Soviet republics to suppress any attempts of uprising, rebellion, and things like that. So when people started talking about voting at the referendum, and you remember that whole Ukraine, including Crimea, most of people in Crimea voted to separate from the Soviet Russia, um, there was a risk that Russians would send the forces of GKChP into Ukraine, and there would be a lot of blood, right? So in order to prevent this, in order to fight back, um, there was this organization created called Interpar- Interparty Assembly. All right, assembly made of different parties. Don't know how to translate it for you guys. And later, this organization was renamed into Ukrainian National Assembly. And Ukrainian National Assembly was basically like a political force. It would never gain more than 0.01% in the government. And I remember that in more than 30 years, we only had one member of parliament coming from this political party in 30 years. But the other part of this organization, because there was like a party, and then there was an organization itself called UNSO, which translates as Ukrainian National Self-Defense. And UNSO was basically the boys. So what did they do? And most of all, what were they made from? What they consist from, right? They mostly consisted of former Soviet military, basically people who fought in Afghanistan, Afghani veterans, some veterans of Vietnam War, actually, the guys who fought on the Soviet side against Americans in the Soviet army back in Vietnam, right? And several other guys from Georgia. Some of them came from Georgia. We they had several Jews in this organization, I remember. And when they were established, when this organization was established, they started planning how to defend Kiev and generally Ukraine if Russia invaded, if Russia wanted to invade Ukraine and suppress the uprising and keep the Soviet Union in one piece. So this is how this organization was established. But we know that GKChP never happened in Ukraine, and organization kept living, right? And then several conflicts actually happened. So one conflict was in Crimea when the Soviet Black Fleet went through the process of division, right? So Ukrainian sailors were offered to pledge to Ukraine and become part of Ukrainian fleet. And then there was a very, very nasty and angry Russian admiral who didn't want that to happen because he would lose men and he would also lose ships. So UNSO, this nationalist organization, and I'm talking about hundreds, if not, well, maybe around 1,000 men, went to Crimea and they literally marched through the Crimean streets to show their presence, to show Russians that if they try to do something stupid, because this admiral literally wanted to attack the ships and the personnel who would pledge to Ukraine. And it was 1992, actually, so you could understand. So if he did something bad, something stupid, Ukrainians would rise and kick their asses. Basically, that was the main idea of this expedition, let's call it this way. 1992, war in Abkhazia. So you know that Russians conducted their hybrid warfare in Georgia, and they basically fueled the pro-Russian forces on the territory of Abkhazia, and they separated from Georgia. So during this war, again, Abkhazian troops, just like separatists in the Donbass, they were backed by Russian troops. They were supplied by Russian troops, and actually, Russian troops fought for them as well. It was 1992. So, Ukrainian National Self-Defense, UNSO, decided that they should send expedition to Georgia to help Georgian people fight against Russian invaders. Again, like if you want to call them Nazi, that's up to you, but it's kind of odd when Nazi go to a different country which is not a white country, right, and fight for people from Georgia who like actually more Middle Easterns than Europeans. So they went there and they fought against Russians. They helped Georgians to fight against Russian invaders. Here we have several pictures of those guys. That is basically a platoon of guys, but generally there were much more. Several hundreds, at least several hundreds of them went to this war, and they fought against Russian invaders. And I had a really nice one. Yeah, I have one in color. So those are the guys. It's 1992, I believe, in Georgia. Because they had a lot of military experience, they were really good at war, right? Not only they had military experience, but also they knew how Russian military doctrine worked, because themselves they were former Soviet military, so they had very strong knowledge of how it worked. And you probably ask yourself, what does this flag mean? So that is basically Antonievsky cross with Ukrainian national logo, the trident, and four letters, UNSO. That's the meaning, and that cross is, I would say, really, really popular in Ukraine. What was next? Next, there was Russian invasion that started as a hybrid war in Chechnya, and guys in this organization, they realized that we should somehow keep Russians occupied in Chechnya, because otherwise they might invade Ukraine. Our army was ruined. Our I don't know. Economy was experiencing deep crisis, a lot of corruption, a lot of pro-Russian forces, again, a lot of communists. The society was not really stable, as it always happens when pro-Russian forces rule your country. And they realized that if Ukraine will not keep Russia occupied in Chechnya, then most probably Russia will invade Ukraine. And there was a high risk of this to happen, because uh, back in those days, specifically in Crimea, Russia would disseminate Russian passports massively among the population. And in order to prevent any separatist movements there, Ukraine would send its National Guard, that was later transformed into internal troops, and those would bring order, all right, to Crimea. Um, so the guys went to Chechnya, and first of all, here I have a picture of chief of this organization holding a cigarette, his second from the left. His name was Anatoly Lupanis. And in the middle, you can see Zelimkhan Yandarbiev, who was deputy president of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, the one that was later, as we know, was destroyed and conquered by Russian invaders. So, couple words about Anatoly Lupanis, this man second from the left with a cigarette. So, he was a legend because he would travel to places like United States without passport and things like that. Who would travel to Georgia, to Chechnya. He knew every political leader on both sides of the globe. And the reason he had such a power was because he spent most of his life in prison. He was a political prisoner in the Soviet Union, and he knew everyone, because when you stay in prison, somehow it happens that you get connected with all sorts of people. So he knew all of the political prisoners, he knew all of the criminal guys, he knew a lot of politicians, and he had a lot of connection around the world. So this person was absolutely genius and legendary in this organization. And he knew people like Dudaev, of course. He knew people like Bill Clinton. So, um, and the reason he spent most of his life behind the bars, as I already said, was because he was a dissident. He would make different paintings, write different texts, criticize Soviet leadership and things like that. And that is why they kept him in the prison, hoping that he would die. But it didn't happen. But unfortunately, because he spent so much time behind the bars in the Soviet prisons, his health was very, very bad. He could barely walk. And he would save matches by igniting one cigarette from another cigarette. So this dude was extremely interesting. So Ukrainians had several expeditions to Ichkeria, where they fought again against Russian invaders, together with Chechens, right? Here I have another photo of, I think that is Yeah, that is one of Ukrainian volunteers in Grozny, in Ichkeria, back when it was still independent from Russia. And you can see that on his helmet he has this like stripe that says Ukraine, and they also had um, like stripes on their sleeves saying Ukraine or some kind of Ukrainian logos. So those guys are the most hated in Russia forever because of that, because they dedicated their lives to fighting Russian influence in Ukraine, Russian regime in Ukraine. They didn't fight, I don't know, people of different color, different race, different nationality. They fought themselves for other people of other nationality, other religion, and they dedicated their lives to fighting Russians. That is why they are so much hated in Russia throughout years, since the very, very beginning, since that very first war in Abkhazia. So that is why they are so much demonized by Russian propagandists, and they were demonized by them throughout the years, throughout decades. Even Nevzorov, the famous Russian director, who made a lot of, I would say, pretty interesting movies. He made this movie called Battery, specifically about the war in Chechnya, with those, almighty, invincible Russian Spetsnaz who just kills everyone with like a spoon. But um, in this movie, he portrayed Chechens that were enforced by black gangsters from United States, who were enforced by lesbian biathlonists from like Baltic countries, and of course brutal and very, very nasty guys from UNSO. That movie was literally like a fairy tale. I laughed my ass so off when I watched it, but it was interesting to understand their view and the way they portray Ukrainians in their movies. Um, so 2001, no, 1996. Oh my God, I'm like a teacher of history. 1996, those guys took part in burial of Ukrainian Patriarch Volodymyr, who had a real chance of reuniting churches in Ukraine, and the pro-Russian regime that ruled Ukraine back in those days would not let them do that, would not let them bury the Patriarch Volodymyr. Oh my God. God forbid, Patriarch Kirill. Patriarch Volodymyr on the territory of Sofia, that is in the Kiev downtown. And what they did was basically they decided to bury the Ukrainian patriarch in front of the gates because Berkut and other Ukrainian corrupted policemen, they were barricaded inside. So they started destroying the asphalt and making a pit, a grave for this patriarch to be buried just outside the gates. And of course, they didn't expect that. And that very moment when this massive fight happened, it's 1996, literally. I think it was like the closest to their evolution possible because after this clash with people and with the guys, you can see the guys in the uniform, right, on the left, and the cops on the right. So those guys on the left, they were basically, because they were Ukrainian national self-defense, they were protecting the people who participated in this event. So they would literally protect them with their own bodies. So those guys were kind of tough and respected for that very reason, because they were fighting against Russian influence, they were fighting against corruption, They were the ones who actually once stormed and captured Pecherska Lavra in Kiev, not for long, but they did. So for a while, due to those guys, Pecherska Lavra was free of FSB influence for like a day or two. What happened next? 2001, there was a big clash between those guys and between the cops that protected the presidential office in Kiev. The reason for that clash was the story of Georgy Honhadze. If you watched my side channel, Vibes Ukraine, you probably know the story. Long story short, corrupted president ordered to kill Ukrainian journalist and he got decapitated. Later, Ukrainians found out about it and they made this huge protest that lasted for months. Again, we were on the brink of revolution, and basically the guys fought against cops at the presidential administration. That was the day when I was 15 years old and I was throwing stones at a policeman who later became my commander in the brigade in HOSTOMEL. Funny story. Organization got kind of divided after that because the leadership of organization went straight to jail for that protest, because back then in Ukraine you would not be really allowed to protest, right? We were basically like poor man's Russia back in those times. And organization divided. So it divided into the same organization that like it only became smaller, and a new organization that would promote all kinds of Nazi shit you can possibly imagine. The chief of this organization was known as Kovalenko, who later, when the Russian full-scale invasion started, was exposed as literally Russian FSB spy, and he later was exchanged for several Ukrainian prisoners. So the dude who ruled this organization and introduced all kinds of neo-Nazi shit turned out to be a Russian spy. I actually prepared something for you because this topic is extremely interesting. And, back in 2022, I was preparing some blog for you that was never finished, but I still have some of the footage that I think you might like, actually. So let's check it out.
I'm happy to introduce Victoria. She's a Ukrainian Muslim. And Victoria, can you please tell a couple of words about yourself?
My name is Victoria. I am a human rights protector. I am head of the organization called Together Versus Law. And we try to defend rights of Muslim people in Ukraine.
Okay, and can you please tell me some ugly facts about Nazi regime in Ukraine, if there's such a regime?
Really, I don't know such cases about some maybe about some conflicts against Muslim in Ukraine. I know that only some people who call themselves nationalists, they try to fight with Jewish people and with Muslim people, but this is like not real facts. This is like media facts.
She will tell you some very interesting story that I would really like you to hear. All right. about those specific guys. Please be attentive, okay?
And maybe you know about one group of people, some from Карпатська Січ, some from Традиція and Порядок. They try to make not formal group of people that called Brenton Tarrant lads.
She's speaking about that individual who went to a mosque and started killing people, and did like an online stream of that. You probably remember this horrible incident. And she's speaking about guys from Ukraine who organized a community in like Messenger and like Telegram, for example, that glorified this dude. Listen to what she says next.
This is not official group of people, and they make a Telegram channel and try to make some media contact about Muslim and Jewish people in Ukraine, and try to talk to another people about these facts, to fight with Jewish people and Muslim people. And when we saw this channel, our human rights organization contact security service of Ukraine, and we work together with security service. After they make this забула слово, як буде розслідування?
Investigation.
Mm-hmm. And when they make this investigation, they find that the head of this group was Russian man.
Oh, interesting fact. So
yeah, this is very interesting fact. So this is why I'm talking about this. I just want to I just want to explain for people where from we have Nazis in Ukraine, because most of this media contact about Nazism it come to Ukraine from Russian side.
So it has Russian origins.
Yes.
That is literally information coming from a chief of the Muslim Organization for Protecting Muslim Rights in Ukraine. Vika, she's my good friend. And it was a good opportunity to devirtualize once in a while. But basically what she says is that this group that she's talking about that was glorifying that fool who shot Muslim people there in the mosque, that this group was organized and led by a Russian person. And Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, investigated this case, and they informed Victoria that actually this was a Russian group involving several Ukrainian fools. Let's hear what she says next, all right?
And how many of those so-called nationalists, like thousands of them, or something like that?
No, I think it's a very small group of people, and I think that a lot of people now, they think that we have Nazi regime in Ukraine. But when we are talking about regime, this means that this is have some connection with government. But in real case, we don't have connections with government in Nazi context, because we don't have parties, Nazi parties. in Ukraine, and that is why we can't say that in Ukraine we have Nazism in government, in politics, and so on. This is like we are talking about that in Russia we have democracy. They don't have democracy in Russia. Okay, they have democratic parties, but people don't vote for these parties. The same in Ukraine. Okay, we have Azov and we have National Corpus, but people don't vote for this. Even not talking about that in this party, in their information about party, they don't have some scenes of Nazism.
Nazi claims. Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, there are no Nazi parties in Ukraine.
Yes.
And basically, everything Nazi in Ukraine is illegal.
Of course.
And basically, because you cooperated with Security Service of Ukraine, so they had investigation on the Nazi movement.
Of course.
What she says is that this case was investigated by the Security Service of Ukraine, and Russians would raise eyebrows like, why would Ukraine investigate cases of Nazism, right? But the fact is, in Ukraine, communism and Nazism are forbidden by law. They are illegal. For example, in the United States, you can just walk out with a swastika on your shoulder, right, and nobody will say anything. But in Ukraine, it's illegal. It's literally beyond the law, right? In Ukraine, you cannot promote communism because communism was a totalitarian regime that killed millions of Ukrainians, and not only Ukrainians, as well as Nazism. Those two things are completely beyond the law in Ukraine. That was a really interesting conversation. I didn't know actually about this case, but I know about cases, for example, involving white supremacists, neo-Nazi skinheads in Ukraine, organization like Blood and Honor, that has the biggest chapter and the strongest chapter in Russia that exists until this day in Russia, right? Those are like neo-Nazi skinheads who fight against people of color, people of different religions and stuff like that. In Ukraine, I remember literally one case when a black gentleman was attacked by those fools. In 30 years of Ukraine's independence, literally, it was 2000, like early 2000s. That was the only case that I remember living in Kyiv myself. Speaking of other nationalist organizations, there were besides those dangerous people, right, that you can see on this photo, the Nationalist Congress of Ukraine. There were other guys. And again, my friends, I'm very sorry I didn't prepare well for this because I'm stupid. But what do we have here? Oh, here we have some real freaking Nazi power. And this is something that apparently you recognize. That is Putler Jugend from Russia. This is literally how Nazi look in the real life, all right? Just a second, I need to find this photo. I think I prepared this for you. So there are other evil nationalists in Ukraine called Young Nationalist Congress. All right, those were the worst, because take a look at those killers, at those murderers, right? They did theatrical theatrical installations, theatrical performances. They would, for example, when it was Christmas, they would go outside. You can see that the guy, second guy on the left, is holding the Christmas star, and they would go outside and entertain kids and people on the streets. They're among the characters on the stage. You can see Joseph Stalin in the middle, right? You can see death next to him. On the far right, you can see Ukrainian rebel with a submachine gun. And they would do theater. They would do poetic evenings, and they would cite the poems of Ukrainian dissidents who were literally killed by Soviet regime or jailed or repressed. So those evil Ukrainian nationalists would do just that. All right. And by the way, among those evil Ukrainian nationalists, there was an impressive number of people from like UK, from the United States, from Canada, of course, because specific of Ukrainian nationalism is that we accept everyone. All right, doesn't matter who you are, what you are. We accept everyone because we're kittens. So those were the guys. They would also make different actions. Here you can see again those evil Ukrainian nationalists who were protesting um, against whatever, against Crimea being given to Russia, Crimean bases being given to Russia, because that is literally an attack on Ukrainian sovereignty, right? Things like that. They would protest, they would read poems, they would have theatrical performances. Evil Ukrainian nationalists. When I was young boy, when I was like 15, 16, and I decided to learn more about those guys because I had this absolutely crazy story that involved like stabbing and revenge in the sketchy district of Kiev and yada yada. I will tell you the other day. So I got acquainted with several guys and I decided to learn more about it, right? Because um, we all imagined like nationalists, like, those tough guys and stuff. In reality, I saw a lot of people that were like 60 plus wearing vyshyvankas and reading poems. And I was like, though, like those are the nasty Ukrainian nationalists that everyone's talking about. That's interesting. What else? There was an organization similar to this one, and I can tell you that 99% cases of those guys going on the streets and participating in the protests, those all were peaceful protests. They would participate, for example, against Hungary attacking Ukrainian hydropower plant. They would protest against Russian language being implemented in Ukrainian regions, considering the fact that this language was forcefully brought by Russia to Ukraine, trying to eliminate Ukrainian identity. Things like that, all right? In majority cases, they were conservative, so they would not support things like LGBTQ. But at the same time, I don't know many cases when they would literally use violence against them. All right. Mostly it was like, we promote traditional values in Ukraine. That's basically it. There was one case that I remember when LGBT would be attacked by some shady guys. But again, if you remember what Vika, my Muslim friend, said just a while ago, I think you might probably understand why it happened. In Kharkiv, there was an organization called Patriot of Ukraine. So what pro-Russian regime of Yanukovych did to those guys? They sent some crazy dude to their office in Kharkiv that was armed with a handgun, as far as I remember, and chief of this organization, his name was Andriy Beletsky, he defended himself and the guys, and they used a hammer against this fool who brought like guns and started shooting at the guys, and he went to jail. So he was repressed. Basically, everything was staged. He was repressed, and later, after the Revolution of Dignity, he was released from prison, and he was the one who organized Azov battalion in May 2014. May 2014 was already after the annexation of Crimea by Russia. It was already after the hybrid war of Russia was launched against Ukrainian Donbass. It was more than 1 month after that. That is basically the reason why when Russians tell you that Russian volunteers came to Donbass to defend Russian-speaking people in Donbass that were murdered massively and buried in mass graves by Azov. That is literally bullshit, because Azov only emerged month after Russian nationals like Girkin went to Donbass and started capturing Ukrainian establishments there. Again, Azov emerged as a response to that. Were those guys nationalists 100%? Can we call them Nazi? Absolutely not. Were there Nazi among them? Of course they were. Small number of those guys, of course they were, because apparently they would not join, I don't know, a church of Buddha in Ukraine. They would most probably join some nationalist movement. What else can I say? Let's talk about political parties. But before we talk about political parties, since we already started talking about Ukrainian Nazi suppressing Russians in Ukraine, let me introduce another friend of mine who also has a story that she can share with you, my friends.
So I decided to ask an ethnic Russian who lives in Ukraine, what does she think about this Nazi regime of Ukrainian Jewish President Zelensky, or any other kind of Nazi regime in Ukraine. So I'm happy to introduce my friend Sofia. And basically, can you tell a couple of words about yourself?
Hi, I'm Sofia. I live in Ukraine since 2018. I used to work in aviation. Now I have to change a little bit. I sacrificed a lot to stay in Ukraine, and I'm happy here.
Yeah, and tell me some dirty facts about discrimination, about being discriminated for your language because you're a Russian-speaking person. So can you tell me something about this?
Well, I would love to, but well, I speak Russian all my life. I speak Russian here because I'm used to it, and of course I love speaking Ukrainian, but I have never met any kind of discrimination or any kind of, you know, dirty language toward myself due to my language, not because of language.
So why do you think there are still people out there who believe that there's like a lot of Nazis in Ukraine?
Well, I'm not sure where they take this information from. Probably they operate based on some, you know, some daily interactions with people. People will be people, and of course some of them are not so nice, but I don't think it's a systematic discrimination based on language. No, totally not.
So it could be propaganda.
It is a propaganda, and it's very profitable for Russian regime. Otherwise, it makes people think like they're, bad people in a way. And if you give them impression that you fight against something bad, like discrimination of any kind, that makes them feel good about themselves.
That was 2022. I didn't speak English like I do today because due to you, my friends, I learned how to curse like a pro, right? But generally what she says is that she's never been discriminated in Ukraine, living in Ukraine as an ethnic Russian and speaking Russian every day, because I believe that big portion of Ukrainian soldiers speak Russian language and they don't care. They cannot repress themselves, right? Speaking of political parties now, in Ukraine we had so many political nationalist parties. We had one, all right, we still have it. So this party is called Svoboda, freedom. And during the Revolution of Dignity, this party, because it was followed by a lot of guys who considered themselves patriots, nationalists, so those guys actually helped a lot during the Revolution of Dignity. There are things that I don't like very much about this political party. For example, there were cases when our singer Gaetana was offered to represent Ukraine at the Eurovision, as far as I remember, and some of those guys in the party they talked against this because she was black, and to me it was like what the fuck, guys, like get real, are you serious? That was probably the only case that I remember about them, and the dude who said that at this very moment he's fighting at the front line, shoulder to shoulder with a black guy call sign Snowman. So they're like best friends. We all evolve in the end. But this political party was so popular in Ukraine. It was so popular, so it never had more than 0.6% represented in the Ukrainian parliament. So I believe they had something like 5 or 6 members of parliament. I think like 5 in 30 years of Ukraine's independence. So if you compare 5 right-wing or conservative members of parliament in Ukraine to, for example, Parliament of Italy or Parliament of France, how many right-wing members of parliament are there? How do you think? Because this was the only party that positioned itself as nationalist party. We have Libertarian Party, that is party of our president Zelensky. We had party of former president Poroshenko, which is called European Solidarity, right? Very, very Nazi-sounding party. And things like that. We had Socialist Party that disintegrated because like they decided to split and disintegrate because they realized that cooperating with pro-Russian regime is bad. And then we had a pro-Russian party that basically, again, collapsed because a number of those members of parliament decided to collaborate with Russian invaders. They literally, some of them became like chiefs of the occupied territories. And they all come from that party. Basically, this party is based on oligarchs, criminals, and pro-Russian elements. So, interesting fact is that even despite being so much respected in Ukraine for their sacrifice, for their bravery, guys from Azov movement, and I'm talking specifically about the so-called National Corps, which is their attempt to create party, never became officially elected in Ukraine because we have some specific margin. If this party passes the margin of those votes, some of those people become members of parliament. So, despite being so much respected and known in Ukraine, Azov movement never managed to get into the parliament for reasons I cannot explain. Ukrainians just don't vote them. Then we had again that UNSO, right, the political wing of this organization, Ukrainian National Assembly. They only had one guy who actually got elected in a different party. All right. So somehow it happens that even though we have nationalist organizations, nationalist parties, they rarely get into the parliament of Ukraine for, again, reasons I cannot explain. People just don't vote for nationalists. What else? What else can I say? Revolution of Dignity. So, Revolution of Dignity could have failed big time because this revolution was peaceful in the beginning, right? All the speakers on the stage at the Maidan of Independence, they all called the protesters to remain peaceful, to not fight against police. Even when police was attacking Maidan several times, they would call the protesters not to fight back. Because it was a peaceful protest. And then, even when the criminal regime of Yanukovych brought Titushkas to Maidan, he brought like sportsmen, he brought a lot of different criminals, thugs, and stuff, literally hired people, hired mercenaries that would not wear uniform, all right? So they would represent literally like Ukraine society, but literally they were hired for money to fight against protesters, using knives, using all kinds of shit. Even when they brought them to the Maidan, the leaders, the spokesman of Maidan, called people not to fight against them. That was the reason why Maidan could have failed big time, because the regime had power, the regime had force, regime had thugs, cops, security service, different secret services, and literally people would be disintegrated. The protest could disintegrate easily if they attacked. So, what nationalists did, they basically organized into hundreds of self-defense, right? You probably remember I talked about hundreds of self-defense that were organized at the Maidan. First hundred, second hundred, third hundred, like companies basically. And nationalists from the very, very beginning, while those hundreds were not even there before they even emerged officially, they were protecting people from cops, from thugs, from secret services, and things like that. And that is why they had a lot of verbal fights against the spokesman of Revolution of Dignity, because they were wearing masks for obvious reason, because police was arresting and raiding people that were protesting. People like me in January 2014 were proclaimed by our parliament, we were proclaimed terrorists for participating in the Revolution of Dignity. And they would give us more years in prison for participating in this protest than we would receive for like a homicide, for like a murder, which was absolutely crazy. So that is why people were wearing masks. They tried to conceal their identity and things like that. But the guys who literally had experience in fighting in groups, like football hooligans, they came from right organizations. And based on those guys, later emerged right sector, правый sector in Ukraine, the organization that was later famous for fighting against Russian invaders in the Donetsk airport for 242 days, together with the armed forces of Ukraine and things like that. Did they do crazy shit? Sometimes, I won't lie, but there are crazy people out there wherever you go. And would they attack people of other colors, religions? Guys, come on, let's not even mention this shit because it's not even funny. The guys I was stationed with, they were basically nationalists. They were stationed in the revolutionary Kiev City Hall, right? So when you walk into the Kiev City Hall and you see this huge room, huge hall actually filled with people, first thing you notice is like tens of different flags hanging under the ceiling. Flags from Italy, flags from Israel, flags from Canada, flags from Japan, flags from Australia that were brought to those evil nationalists by people from those countries that were visiting Revolution of Dignity and showing their support to our guys. So that is literally what I can tell you about the nationalists in Ukraine. Can Ukraine be called like Nazi regime? 100% not, because Ukraine is not represented by any nationalist political party at this very moment. There's none, all right? They don't exist in the parliament. That is a hardcore fact. There is another interesting myth that I actually faced the other day. This myth says that President Zelensky uses Nazi forces to fight against Russian people, and all Ukraine's armed forces are mimicking the way they behave, those Nazi guys, as if there's like millions of them. Fact is, in 2021, as far as I remember, in 2021, Azov, this mighty force, announced that they are forming 3rd Infantry Battalion. It was December 2021, shortly before the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. They announced that they will be forming 3rd Infantry Battalion within this regiment. How many people is that? How do you think? So one battalion is 350 plus men, all right? Which means that in December 2021, Almighty Azov had up to 1,000 men in the regiment. Okay, plus artillery, plus drivers, plus medics, plus anti-air, whatever, but around 1,000 men. How crazy is that? 1,000 men, so that is insane. Interesting facts about the Azov movement, because again, they had Nationalist Corps, which was supposed to be some kind of movement that would search for the nationalist representation in the parliament of Ukraine. So again, people, not like they didn't vote for those guys, but the guys didn't pass the margin, the necessary margin in the parliament of Ukraine. In 30 years, we had, again, like 5 nationalist members of parliament out of 450, all right? And interesting fact, Russian propagandists and other pro-Russian talking heads, they like to spread the myth that actually Azov movement, all the far right guys in Ukraine, they freaking love President Zelensky and they would do anything for their Führer, you know, and Zelensky loves them so much. So the painful fact is that nationalist core and the very Azov movement were in the craziest and biggest opposition to President Zelensky. They were also in the opposition to previous President Poroshenko. But when Zelensky got elected, they were in such opposition to him that he would even rarely visit them at the front lines during the anti-terrorist operation in Donbass. He would prefer not to go there because you can actually find this confrontation between Zelensky and one of the Azov guys on a YouTube when they had verbal fight when President Zelensky visited their positions, and Azov guys would say, Mr. President, what the hell is going on? Why are we moving back our artillery? Why are we just giving up these positions that we're making? What's the point? Because President Zelensky's agenda was to show that Ukraine is ready for peace and that it's time to solve the war in Donbass peacefully with Russians, with which Russians never agreed to. Because whenever we would move back and move our heavy artillery back, Russians would start digging trenches closer and closer to us and eventually capture more and more positions. It was prior to the full-scale invasion. So this soldier from Azov, he had a confrontation with President Zelensky right there at the positions. Video is broadly available on YouTube, I bet, with all sorts of subtitles, and they were fighting because of that. So Azov movement and I would say 100% of nationalists, right-wing, whatever movements in Ukraine were opposing President Zelensky. They were never friends. As of this moment, of course, President Zelensky and Azov guys, they respect each other because he's the supreme commander. But back in those days, it wasn't the case at all. They were always in the opposition to both President Zelensky and previous President Poroshenko. That is something that Russians don't want you to know, actually, because they want you to know that crazy Jew Zelensky is actually Nazi using racists and neo-Nazi in Ukraine to fight against Russians, which, by the way, Sophia debunked in the previous video that I showed you. That is what they want you to know. The reality is absolutely different. Reality is that they were opposing basically every government that we had between 2014 and 2022. That is a fact that, again, is easy to check. You can see a lot of protests that nationalist core and Azov movement had on the streets in Kiev, protesting against President Poroshenko and against President Zelensky. Speaking of Svoboda, those guys, as soon as the full-scale invasion began, those guys became a battalion, an infantry battalion, and they went to war. So again, they were not represented in the parliament of Ukraine at all. They, at the moment of the Russian full-scale invasion, they had 0 members of parliament. And when the full-scale invasion began, the party became a battalion, and they went to fight on the front line. Um, those guys were known, again, there are episodes that I really don't like, and there are episodes that I hate myself. I myself hate about them. There was this absolutely crazy episode when there was a protest under the Ukraine's parliament, under the Verkhovna Rada in Kiev. And actually, I was supposed to go there with my battalion because it was 2015. I was still a cop, and my police battalion was supposed to go there. But instead of that, I got sent to guard a checkpoint, right, with my partner, with Vlad, who died several months ago. And during a protest, one of the guys from this party threw a grenade at policemen and National Guardsmen that were actually defending the parliament of Ukraine, killing 4 people. So some of those people were actually young guys. That was a crazy episode that I remember. But again, I only recalled like 4 or 5 crazy episodes in 30 years about nationalists in Ukraine. That's literally I'm trying to make up something, for the story, but I don't know. If you want to recognize like real Nazi, all right, if you want to check out how real Nazi, what they look like in the real life, you gotta actually check out those guys, all right, because this is what the real Nazi look like in reality, all right. Those are people who actually kill you because you are a Chechen, who kill you because you are Georgian, who kill you because you are Syrian, who kill you because you are Ukrainian, who kill you because you are a freedom-loving person, and they basically train their kids to become future invaders that will be killing you for being a democratic person, for being someone who loves freedom. And this organization is the most massive youth organization in Russia. They have numerous camps, military camps, where they are taught how to operate arms, where they are taught how to uh, do CQB, how to attack positions, capture positions, fight in trenches, and things like that. So that is a clear example of what Nazi really look like, all right, in the real life. And unfortunately, among those, there's a lot of Ukrainian kids that were also snatched by Russian invaders, brought to Russia forcefully, and later delivered to those military camps for kids, where they are being indoctrinated and trained as future Russian invaders. What did I forget? What did I forget to tell you? Crazy Nazi, yeah, we talked about them. Again, in 30 years in Ukraine, I remember only case when, for example, Jewish synagogue, Central Jewish Synagogue in Kiev was attacked. Someone threw like a Molotov cocktail inside. In 30 years, that is like 1/3 of a century. Where they Ukrainian nationalists, highly doubt. I know that even in the Ukrainian National Self-Defense, there was a Jewish guy who actually made this logo of the organization using Jewish letters. And he had this emblem and he was wearing it proudly. Do I consider myself a Ukrainian nationalist? Oh my God, because back when I was 15, 16, I would say yes. I would say yes because, as most of Ukrainian nationalists, we had one clear enemy that wanted to destroy Ukraine for centuries, that wanted our nation to be eliminated, that did all they could to destabilize our society, to disrupt our unity, to fill our market with Russian books, Russian literature, Russian music, Russian culture. And we had no way to fight back. So we had to defend our culture and our identity in any possible way. Can I call myself Ukrainian nationalist now? I really can't, because to me doesn't make much sense. You know, I fought 10 years for Ukraine, but I would fight 10 more years for any country attacked by Russia, be it Germany, United Kingdom, France, Japan, Taiwan. I don't care. I would spend 10 more years fighting for this country, because to me there is nothing like my nation is the best. To me, there are bad guys and there are good guys that should defend themselves, and this is what I believe in. So that is my answer. What else can I say? Nationalism itself is basically явище. Oh my God, dear Ukrainians, please let me translate this word, because it's I don't know how to translate it properly in English language. It emerged around 18th century, as far as I remember. You remember France, French Revolution, things like that. Back in those days, when such term as country, as state, only started emerging, nationalism was, I would say, demanded, right, by people who wanted to identify themselves somehow in frames of language, culture, and territory. So back in those days, nationalism played its role in establishing countries as we see them today. Do I believe that nationalism has a future? I don't see that. I don't see that because we live in a global society nowadays, and it's a fact. No matter if you like it or dislike it, but we live in a global society, and we have to adapt to changes in this society. Our countries become more and more multicultural, and we have to adapt to this, not suppress other ethnicities or nationalities or races, but adapt to this and make sure that everyone feels safe, secure, and happy in a given country. That is something that I see. In Ukraine, nationalism was important to defend our identity from being destroyed from Russian communists that destroyed a lot of other ethnicities. So we already see that Buryats, they don't understand who they are, right? They think that they're Russians. Buryats, Yakuts, Chukchas, Nanaitsi, you name it, right? There's a lot of them. And because Ukrainians fought for their identity, we still have our identity because we spent numerous years preserving our language, preserving our culture, preserving our history, and not letting Russian communists rewrite this history. Because of all this, Ukrainian nation survived. And I would say that the role of Ukrainian nationalism most probably stopped being crucial in like around 2015. It was still important, of course, because again, Ukrainian society, there is like 100,000 guys fighting in the anti-terrorist operation, and there is like 40 million people applauding them. You know, like guys, I gave you like thumbs up on Facebook. You know, I support you. Fight for me. So even then, I would say that things like Ukrainian nationalism, they were important because people who wanted to fight for Ukraine, they had opportunity to unite and fight. And frankly speaking, I think that if you are a real nationalist, if you consider yourself a nationalist, you gotta join the army because this is the biggest sacrifice that you can make, and this is the biggest way to implement to show your true beliefs, right? Being a nationalist means that you you can fight, literally fight for your country. That is what I can see. But the way I see nationalism is in the future is most probably it's like friendly competition between countries in terms of economy, in terms of technology, in terms of GDP, because I believe in friendly competition that gives a good kickstart to things that we all know as progress. So that is the way I see it. Ooh, it was quite a lecture, I think. It was quite a lecture. And again, I would not call this nationalism, I would probably call this patriotism. Because if you really stand for your country, if you root for your country during football match, if you I don't know, drink only your beer, produced in your country, and we slowly move, towards the topic of food very very soon. If you really do that, doesn't necessarily mean that you are nationalist. It means that you are most probably patriot, right? Because this is the way it is. You can be a patriot regardless of what color you are, what race you are, what nationality you are. Um, Please let me know if you agree with me. I heard Azov likes to use Nordic mythology symbols, rituals, which are popular with extremists like Nazis and Russian fascists. So wouldn't Azov look better if they used other symbology? So Roger, I talked about. I will probably tell you a like big secret, right? But back when I was in the press service of the National Guard of Ukraine, I talked about this with leadership of the press service of the National Guard. And I talked about this. I said that, guys, I love Azov so much. I have so many friends there. But we gotta do something about symbols. And it was like a very, very hard discussion back in those days. It was 2020, 2019 back then. So it was a very, very hard discussion. The guys were eager to preserve their symbols because with that very patch, the let's say controversial, very controversial patch, they fought in Donbass. They fought in Mariupol. They captured, not captured, liberated Mariupol from Russian invaders back in 2014. So they fought with this patch. They were losing their friends with this patch. And if you served in the military, you probably must understand how hard it is to change your patch, right? To even agree to changes, to changing this patch. So on this level, I can understand them. On the other level, like those symbols, I would not wear, right? No matter how much I respect Azov, I would not wear myself because those symbols are notorious, and I think that you will agree with me. Their rituals, so they position themselves as pagans and stuff like that, Nordic beliefs and yada yada. So it's not like this one is kind of fun because this is like more like a joke. So in Ukrainian brigades, we have chaplains, we have Christian chaplains, we have Muslim chaplains. In Azov, because they wanted to, like, it was basically a joke. They made like this shrine of Perun, right? Of, or like Odin or whatever, like pagan gods. And they would make it like a joke, like a marketing, all right? So it wasn't for real, actually, like their pagan shrines. I know that from the guys. They were literally having fun. So it wasn't something real. Besides that, we all know that in Azov there's like, again, people of different sorts of religions, ethnicities. There are Azerbaijani guys, there are Jewish guys, there are Chechen guys, there are Georgian guys, of course. So again, it's not like they are uh, even as far right as people think. But on the other hand, I would, if I had some kind of influence, of course, I would change a lot in terms of symbols, because symbols are important. You can see that Russians are using like V symbols, Z symbols. As far as I remember, V symbols were also used by Adolf Eichmann back in those days. And Russians, without even realizing it, or maybe while realizing it, despite of realizing it, they also use those symbols, but like they don't care because they're stupid. And another thing that Azov always position themselves, they say that they are nationalist. Another thing that, again, you must remember is that Nazism as well as communism are illegal in Ukraine. It's illegal to promote those ideas or carry symbols in any way. So if you notice a person with either communist or Nazi symbols, call 911. Bam, this person goes to jail. As easy as that. I know for sure because we were arresting such people since 2015. Frankly speaking, if Elon Musk did that in Ukraine, that salute that he did, I would be pleased. I would be so pleased to put handcuffs on him. Nazism is illegal in Norway, but not communism. Well, probably because communism didn't kill as much people in Norway as it did in Ukraine. Generally speaking, do you remember, like 2022, I showed you that crazy political ad for like some of the far left communist slash socialist parties in Ukraine. Progressive Socialist Party, they were best friends with Ukrainian Communist Party, and they were also best friends with like Putin, Zhirinovsky, and all sorts of crazy people. So you probably remember that crazy ad when it was made by this party, by Communist Party actually, when that babushka walks into church and the priest turns his face to her and she has a heart attack because the priest is black. And she's like, oh my God. And the leader of this party says, like, no Western influence in Ukrainian churches. They position themselves as communists. So basically, it doesn't matter if you're far left or far right. 99.99% that you are funded by Russia. It's a fact, all right? And generally speaking, nowadays there is not a big difference between them both, because both far left and far right can interchange, all right? Again, it's a fact that any intelligence agency will confirm to you. What's your favorite empire from history? Favorite empire? Persian Empire. Probably. That those evil guys, those ones, the Congress of Ukrainian Nationalists, all right? So the name of the organization is actually really funny because the abbreviation is KUN, KUN, the Congress of Ukrainian Nationalists. Ukrainian abbreviation is KUN. My lady said that KUN in Persian language is actually like a rear, like an S, okay, so to say. So that is why it's kind of fun. Tolkien was into Nordic runes before Nazis corrupted them and all Nordic symbols and mythology. Yeah, I agree. Many Russian soldiers have a lot of Nazi tattoos on their bodies. Absolutely. And generally speaking, it doesn't matter if they say that they are anti-fascists, because what they do is literally fascism. Fascism is based on things like religion, sport, culture, all the elements of fascism that are very, very specific to fascism, you can find in modern Russian culture known as Ruski Mir. That is literally Mein Kampf and doctrine of fascism of Benito Mussolini multiplied by 10 and combined. That is literally Ruski Mir. Test Rabbit, I'm really, really sorry. I'm actually trying to quit this shit. And I was successful. I didn't vape for like 2 days, but I broke. I bought another one. But I will be working on myself. Zelensky days are numbered. I completely agree on this, my dear viewer, because as soon as Russia collapses, we will have democratic elections of a new president and somebody else will be elected. Something that Russians probably even forgot how it, like, what it looks like to elect somebody, all right, to have free will, all right. Nazis thought that Christianity was too Middle Eastern, so they embraced Nordic mythology. That's very interesting topic, by the way, because as far as I remember, Adolf Eichmann tried to invent an alternative Christianity because Germans were like vastly Christians, um, and the main character of Christian religion is a Jew from Galilee, right? it didn't really combine. So Nazis in Germany, they tried to make alternative Christianity. So there were several versions of it. Version number one was that Jesus was actually son of Roman legionnaire who had sexual intercourse with his mother, the Saint Mary, and basically it made him an Aryan. So it was like brain cancer number one. Brain cancer number two was there was like a different thing. They were saying that he's not a Jew. He's from Galilee, and Galilee is like inhabited vastly by Aryans. So there were several versions of that. There were actually even like special like services, like Nazi scientists were studying and combining and creating new Nazi slash Christian religion that would be adopted by Third Reich. When you like you gotta check Wikipedia on that because it's so crazy and funny, but the more you read about it, the more you understand the processes happening right now in the terrorist federation because it's the same shit. Absolutely. 100% same shit. Titan! Hello, my friend. Hello, sir. How are you? It's been a while actually since I've seen you for the last time here. Um, does your lady make Persian food? So pomegranate soup I saw her eating the time I took her to the Persian restaurant. Um, so I decided that in future I will make myself a new tattoo because this fashion of like making like Japanese or Chinese hieroglyphs that basically mean something like frozen turkey, all right, or like canned beans, all right, and you make those tattoos sincerely believing that it means something like prosperity and power. In reality, it's like unfreeze for 5 minutes in the microwave, like literally, or like pork sausage. So I decided to make myself some really, really cool tattoo in Persian, like somewhere. And I wanna tattoo like lubio polo. Lubio polo is basically a Persian dish. It's like rice with something like rice with veggies. Yeah, but it will look really cool, and I will be telling everyone that this means something like power and immortality. But it will mean like Lubio Polo. Um, which actually like I find it's really really cool. Uh, In my opinion, when you make a tattoo, you gotta make something that will bring you joy and that other people will like. Meaning that this stuff may not have any deep sense. Because when you see a person, for example, a lady, right, with like this dragon tattooed on her back or like on her rear, it doesn't have teeth, okay? It smiles, it doesn't have teeth because it symbolizes that it's not aggressive. And this dragon is peacefully sleeping on the lotus flower that is surrounded by stars, and there are like different hieroglyphs and things like. What the hell is that? What kind of brain cancer is this shit, guys? It should look cool. I don't care what the hell it means. Like, I look at this stuff and I'm trying to understand like what the no, like if there is like some kick-ass skull tattooed on it with like flames. Oh my god, it looks so kick-ass. That's like my understanding of, of art and fashion. But that's just my opinion, my friends. Like, if you want to tattoo something with like deeper meaning, uh, you gotta make sure that you will be the person who will enjoy looking at it. All right. And by the way, let me know what is your most kick-ass tattoo if you have one. Makes you happy. Something like the date of the mother-in-law. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Uh, we could broaden this to several other religions and see who they say they're for. Yeah, could be. My best suit has a flaming skull on the back. You can only see it just the right light. Wow, really? That's so cool. I missed the context. What about religion? We were talking about the alternative Christianity that was actually developed by Third Reich back in the times of the World War II. There is a very, very big article on Wikipedia. Actually, you can find it. It's very interesting to read because I don't know, because it reflects what is happening in Russia nowadays. I have a runic letter tattoo. Wow, what does it mean? Like that very runic letter. I thought about getting an outline of the Kyrgyz flag as a tattoo after I lived there. Oh, did you live in Kyrgyzstan? One of the countries that I don't know much about, actually. Tiny Pikachu. Ah, all right. I thought about Pikachu, frankly speaking, but I want something like something. Ellie the other day made like this fairy tale unicorn with Ukrainian flag, and I would have something like that because I like cute things. Ah, Bishkek. That's interesting. What is the coolest food in Kyrgyzstan? Please let me know. Norse paganism is all about nature. If I got a tattoo, it would be something like that. Maybe elves. Yeah, why not? Elves are cool. You could wear a unicorn horn. Would that make me horny? Any Bible since 1611 is sus for sure. I can agree on that. Probably plov. But is plov like Uzbek food? Because as far as I remember, it's kind of Uzbek or Kazakh or it's like common for Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. I need to know because I love plov myself. And guys, if you don't know what plov is, it's basically rice with everything is boiled. All right, it's rice with meat, with berries, with onion, carrot, and all that stuff is boiled in a big pot, and it's very very soft. Like you boil them in turns, all right, in special proportions and special timings. So carrot is very very soft when boiled, and it smells so good. I don't know if you never tried plov. That's just that's just something absolutely amazing. Plov is Uzbek, but it's all over Central Asia. That's something that I suspected, actually. Fried lamb, yeah, fried lamb. Um, in Ukraine, like, frankly speaking, in Ukraine, we cooked it mostly from pork because pork is the most widespread meat in Ukraine, I think, like in most of European countries. But lamb, yeah. The reason I never cook anything with lamb is because I'm afraid to spoil it, because lamb requires specific process of preparation, soaking in water or something like that. I'm not familiar with this stuff. I remember this Kyrgyzstani coach that want people to strengthen their legs as a basic for a long and healthy life. She popped up a while ago in my feed. What was the name of the coach? I think I know who you're talking about, but I have doubts. Muslims don't use pork, and that is exactly the reason, according to several myths that I heard the other day. That is exactly the reason why Ukrainians like pork so much, because the legend says that when Ukraine was occupied by Ottomans, by Turkey, right? So Turks would demand Ukrainian villages to give out their cattle and like their animals to feed the Ottoman army. That is the reason why Ukrainian villages switched almost completely to pork, and they would not feed the army with their cattle otherwise. So that's one of the myths that I heard. I'm not though not really sure how legit it is, but that's what I heard. And generally, it's, I don't know, like pork is considered almost like Ukrainian totem creature, if you know what I mean. Have you ever spoken on Asgard's festival or black metal in Ukraine? I've been to a bunch of black metal festivals in Ukraine, in Kiev specifically. I even had my rib broken on one of them during a mosh pit. It was really cool. Like, couldn't breathe, couldn't stand, couldn't sleep, couldn't fart, couldn't live basically for like a month or two. It was amazing. Whole chicken with vegetables in rice is fantastic. Yeah, we have a specific recipe to my God, I'm losing my skills of English language. We have a specific recipe for cooking chicken in a very, very special way. We call it chicken tapaka. You probably heard about this one. It's like flat chicken, all right? He's flat like this. And we cook it with plenty of garlic. It has like, its skin is like grilled so well, you know, it's like crunchy. Oh my God. I'm drooling again. I was living in Dnipro when the Scorpions were touring Ukraine. Yeah, I never made it to their concert, unfortunately. But I remember when they were touring. I'm Jewish but not religious, so I believe that it's wrong to eat pork unless it's delicious. It's wrong to eat anything unless it's delicious, my friend. That's my belief. Uh, it's wrong to eat anything unless it's delicious. Only delicious food deserves our attention. Doesn't matter how much garlic you think you should add more. 100%, I agree with you. There is never too much garlic. It's a fact. I hate emo music. Oh my God. My life would not be complete without Bring Me the Horizon. And by the way, Oliver Sykes is some of the strongest supporters for Ukraine. Bad food is a crime. And this is the reason why Russia is full of criminals, because only today I spoke to my friend about Russian shit. Russian shit. So I never tried them, but neither did she. But we were like discussing the Russian shit. Yeah, it's like, you know, like Ukrainian borscht, right? It's so filling. It contains everything. It's like it's very dense because there's potato, meat, beans, cabbage, beetroot, you name it. Um, Russian shit is literally just cabbage. That's it. They just pickle the cabbage and then they freeze it and then they just boil it and that's it. And it's not because they live in a poor country, because Russian soil is as rich as Ukrainian soil. They can grow anything. But the difference is that in Ukraine, when you go to like when you visit any household in a village, you always see this orchard. You see like pumpkins, watermelons, carrot growing, garlic, onion, of course, um, tomatoes, cucumbers, anything. In Russia, it's like so different. Like they don't care much. I think it's just like a like cultural. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Maybe I'm just too biased towards Russians, but there's something that I noticed. I bought cigarettes because vape store too far away. Oh my god, why did you do that, my friend? I didn't smoke cigarettes for years due to this shit. How is the polo in Ukraine? It's really good, actually. It's really good. Again, we mostly cook plov with pork. I don't know why, honestly. Either because beef is too expensive or because chicken doesn't smell properly. So we prefer like pork. Sounds like shit is something else in English. And yeah, you are right. The way it sounds explains pretty much what it is. Russian shit. And Ukrainian homemade rose wine. So, Steve, since I'm not the biggest fan of drinking, Ukrainian rose jam is something absolutely magic, and I just don't know how to explain it. It's so cool. Um, Vareniki is Ukrainian because in Russia, pelmeni are more popular. They're popular in Ukraine too, but in Ukraine slash Poland, we have this common thing that is called vareniki slash pirogi. In Russia, they mostly have pelmeni. So it's like dumplings with meat. They have like different shape. Vareniks are like half moon, all right, and pelmeni are like round um, and tinier actually. Yeah, I was talking about the rose jam. So actually, we have rose jam. We have several recipes of cooking, of preparing the rose jam, which is extremely cool in case you have cold or fever, you know, your throat hurts and things like that. But we also have um, onion jam. How crazy is that? So this is something that my grandma cooked because remember I told you the story when I was a small kid. Every time I would visit my grandma in Kryvyi Rih, I would have like allergic asthma and I would get sick very fast. So my grandma cooked onion jam, literally onion jam, like in a jar, onion with honey and plenty of sugar, something like that. So it smelled really bad. The taste was really interesting, hard to explain. So it was hot like onion, and it tasted pretty much like onion, only sweet onion. So it required quite a lot of bravery to actually eat it. But on the other hand, if you feel sick, you just take onion jam, you put it on the bread, like thick layer of it, and have it with like hot tea, and it works like magic. Onion jam, my friends, it's crazy. In Poland, varenika are generally called pierogi. Ruski. Yeah, this is something we talked today, by the way. So for some reason in Poland, the vareniks with potato and cheese, they call it Ruski. And I said that apparently it's because of Ruthenia or because Ukrainians were known as Rusini, um, especially in that region bordering Poland, right? So in my opinion, Poles would never call their own pierogi their national dish. They would never call them Russian pierogi because that is way below their national self respect. So that's 100% not because they're like Russian. That's because of Ruthenia and Rusini, that this is the way they called Ukrainians. They're fried in Poland. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. What we usually do, we cut onion in tiny pieces. We throw those pieces on the frying pan and just slightly fry them so they become like, like golden. And then we drop them on top of pierogi, so it kind of looks like they were fried. But generally, we just like boil pierogi and varenics. We either boil them or we cook them using steam. Uh, those also taste really nice. Onion jam I have seen, never tried. You gotta try it for real. Um, it tastes interesting. It doesn't taste. It won't make you vomit, of course, but it tastes weird. It's like when you try something like ginger, for example. Ginger smells like something sweet, but it tastes like something absolutely different. It's hot. Same with onion jam. It doesn't smell really nice, but actually it's not bad. It's kind of tasty. I miss Grechka. Oh yeah, the buckwheat. The buckwheat is so good. I have question about borscht. I read somewhere that it was originally made with hogwheat. I cannot confirm this one. As far as I remember, the hogweed is kind of poisonous. Again, as far as I remember, at least what we call borshchivnik in Ukrainian, in Ukraine, it's kind of poisonous kind of plant. So I don't even really know why it's called borshchivnik. The most weirdly amazing food I wouldn't have expected personally is canned moose meat. Mm, never tried moose meat, but I think I would like it. Grechka like kasha. Yeah, basically it's buckwheat porridge. You cook it the same way you cook rice. You drop 1 cup of buckwheat and 2 or 2.5 cups of water, and 15 minutes it's done. And it's really good. If you work out, if you need some kind of additional source of protein, you gotta eat buckwheat because it contains a lot of protein. And generally speaking, it smells really nice. You drop like a piece of butter in it, and it's just so good. My mom makes onion tea as a type of cold medicine. Smells, yeah, yeah. Onion is so nice in case you are sick. And I heard that you gotta actually eat like 1 onion per day to keep a doctor away. I'm not really sure if it works like that, but because if you eat that much onion, you will keep all sorts of people away, like your potential dates, I don't know, your parents, your siblings, eventually. But I believe that there's some truth to that. Moose is good, caribou is better, and musk ox is the best. Grechka with tomato sauce is great for when you're broke. Yeah, the way we cook it in Ukraine is we cook grechka, the buckwheat, the porridge. We add fried meat, tomato sauce, garlic, and we enjoy life. One garlic a day keeps the vampire away. Yeah. If it keeps the tax man away, might be more. Yeah, absolutely. Is there something to eat every day to keep Russians away? Yes, yes. Like stew made out of like Russian babies with tears of Russian widows works every time. At least this is what they were saying about us. Venison is great when done properly. I agree. Japanese meat knives are the best in the world, a must for a chief. I have a Japanese knife on my kitchen, the biggest one. Baked pike. Yeah, either pike or catfish, like the big one. Oh my god. And stuffed with stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Do you guys like smoked fish? Because we have this stuff. It's like a smoked fish. I don't know how to explain. It's not like herring, because herring is not smoked, obviously. But it's like smoked. It's really, really good with potato. Let me know if you have this stuff. God, I'm so hungry. I swear. I would just go and have something. I'm Polish and I hate buckwheat. You know, I'm Ukrainian and I'm not the biggest fan of lard, the salo. Don't hate me for that, but it's true. Also, beetroot. For example, in borscht, we obviously put a lot of beetroot, and I I can't stand beetroot at all. Smoked salmon. Yeah, something like that, but it's a different thing. Let me see. Let me see, my friends, if I can find it. I gotta show it to you, all right? Um, I gotta show it. Yes, here it is. So generally, it looks like. Sorry, I'm trying to type, but uh, I'm trying to type, but I don't have Ukrainian keyboard on this one. Yes, here it is. This is what it looks like. All right, for example, open this one. So this is the smoked fish, my friends. This is what it looks like, and it's absolutely amazing. It's really, really good with like potato. If you prefer some kind of strong beverage, you can also try it with strong beverage. Um, as you see, it's not red fish, it's literally like white fish. I'm not really sure even which kind of fish it is, but it's smoked. It smells fantastic. The smoked salmon, not really bad, but the way it smells, I'm not a fan. But this one is just with potato. My mom would squeeze onion juice into my ears. Oh my god, I misspelled as eyes. Whenever I was sick and congestion made my ears hurt. Made the pain go away within an hour. That's interesting. I never heard about that. Friends, I don't really know what's the name of the fish. All right. I mean, what they call this fish, but you can often find this sort of fish, for example, in like Eastern European grocery stores. And if you do, if you have such a store in your location, it's highly advised to buy one at least so you could try with, for example, potato, either boiled potato with different greenery, with dill, or with mashed potato. It's perfect. Sorry to disappear. Real life guests are arriving. My friend, all the best to you and your guests. And also, I think it's a good time to say see you, my friends, because it's been a while, 2 hours and 17 minutes. My dear friends, I will be wrapping up. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please let me know your thoughts in the commentaries. I will address all sorts of questions. Don't hesitate to ask me whatever you like to learn about today's topic. I will do my best to answer your questions. And as always, thank you so much for supporting my channel. Thank you so much for supporting my brigade, which I'm really grateful for. And also, thank you so much for supporting my country and my people, because this is the proper thing to do. Big thanks to all the members of my channel. Big thanks to the moderators. And big thanks to everyone who stands with Ukraine. It was a pleasure. And we'll see you soon, my dear friends. Be safe.